I was so all in my business and so focused, I let my health go. I started working out less, I started practicing less, and I just got consumed by the business. And then 10 years later, I found myself on the opposite end of the spectrum where I was just completely out of shape. And then that started catching up to me. It started affecting me as far as.
Well, and one year we were talking about this idea of people having profound success often showed, because they say, success leaves clues and ways. And we were analyzing these certain people in different categories. And we noticed that some of these people that were having profound success had.
What a struggle it was at times for him, and how he was super close to quitting at times. But he persevered, and he grew the business, and now he sold it, and now he's looking to just kind of.
Hey friends, you're tuned in to the Learn or Be Learned podcast, a show where wisdom meets curiosity in order to discover the human experience. I'm your host, Shiva D, and remember, you either learn from or you're learned from. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, welcome back, friends, to another great episode on Learn or Be Learned. Today's guest is Craig Cook. He's an author, entrepreneur, and an avid learner, and currently learning about Eastern medical philosophies and medicine in Chinese medicine, correct?
That's correct. Chinese energy medicine.
Correct. And Craig, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I think we have a few parallels in interest here, and I'm really excited to have you.
Cool. Thank you, Shiva. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no problem. So, I've read your bio a little bit and I kind of have a little idea of your backstory, but do you mind sharing a little bit for the audience of what you did and how you are where you are now?
Sure. I'll do my best to summarize here. So, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So that was my background of just being comfortable with entrepreneurship, or familiar, I should say. And actually started working at the age of 10 in my mother's restaurant. She had a very small restaurant, washing dishes. And then at 13, I became a busboy. 16, I became a waiter. And that taught me a lot of lessons as far as being efficient, communication, working under pressure, being organized, salesmanship, all those great things. Restaurant. It's a great place to work in a restaurant to learn all these different skills. I went to business school, studied operations management, got a minor in marketing. And at the time, I volunteered for the Multimedia Design Center and taught myself a lot of programs that were brand new, like Photoshop 1.0. That's how I'm dating myself. Yeah, so Photoshop and Illustrator and Quark Express and all these programs. I taught myself, then I would help other students and faculty with the programs too. So that's what really got me fascinated with technology. And then a couple years out of school, I started a business with a couple of friends from college, and with very limited resources, $1,300 a piece in a computer. And it was an online business, a digital first business in the 20th century in 1996. Yeah. And it was interesting because we were marketing independent music online, and it was an idea before its time. People could actually come to the site, listen to song samples, and buy the artist CDs through a secure server way back in 1996. There's no MP3s, no broadband. Everyone was afraid to buy stuff online at the time. And we started getting requests for other companies like, hey, this internet stuff. Can you do our website for our company? Like, sure. And then we switched gears and started this journey of becoming a digital agency. And long story short, there's a lot to that whole story. I sold it in 2019, and then I stayed on for 3 more years as CEO in my existing role, and then left in early 2022 took the rest of the year off, and then last year just started the whole new chapter, which involves a number of things. Um, and my newest thing that I've introduced is a book, Business Kung Fu, and I'm sure we'll get into all that. But that's the short background. Hopefully, it wasn't too long.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I relate in a lot of ways. I have that entrepreneurial interest, and currently, I was pre med up until a few years ago. I just didn't resonate with the
Mm.
medical field, and over time, eventually found Ayurveda, which is
Ah,
Indian medicine, and
yes.
so which is why I was very fascinated by your interests and how, which I'm sure we'll get into, but how you meshed both of those together and how you improved your business and how you operated in business with the lessons you learned from self healing and care and everything. So, you know, I love that. But before we get into all those, a question that came to my mind was in marketing in 96 must have been very different compared to today. I see a lot more marketing agencies now. What is your thoughts about that whole industry as a whole today? You think it's oversaturated? Do you think there's still room for growth?
There's definitely compared to what it used to be. Yeah, there's so many more agencies, and I do feel it's oversaturated. Yes, I do. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, back in 1996, I mean, the world was focused on traditional advertising, which was print, radio, television, and I mean, there's various aspects to those with different types of publications or cable TV network, all that stuff. But it was much more simple, right? Not very many channels
Hmm.
to really select from. Today, you have so many more channels and options between digital display advertising, social media, email, um, search, connected TV, which is like video on like Hulu and things of that nature. And then, of course, all the traditional stuff still. And then anything that kind of bridges the gap between those two. There's just so much, like the landscape has just exponentially grown as far as media goes, media options. So that's a big challenge. And then the level of sophistication of marketing too, with really a drive towards experiences. Yeah. So before in the 20th century, with traditional print television, radio, it was a lot of this like interruption marketing. You're watching a television show, you're listening to a song, right? You're reading through a magazine, and you're interrupted with an advertisement.
Mm,
Whether you're seeing it or listening or reading, right? Um,
right.
Digital changed that quite a bit. I mean, we still have that, but for example, email marketing was the dawn of permission based marketing, where people would raise their hand and say, "Yeah, I want to hear from you. Sure, I'll opt in to your newsletter." And that was a big game changer because then you were able to communicate to people in a personalized way uh, with content that was relevant to each individual subscriber. So it was more personalized, more relevant, and they were wanting to hear from you as opposed to straight up an interruption. So with that and with search, that changed the game too because there's the kind of what's called the zero moment of truth, where there's a trigger event. Someone is going through their life and there's a life event, and boom, oh, I need this based on this life event. Let me go search and see where I can find it. Right. So instead of being interrupted, someone's actively searching for what they need. Another big game changer. And then, of course, social. And we could go on and on, but all these different experiences, right? They're all experiences. And that's what's just completely different in the 21st century as opposed to the 20th.
Right. Not to mention now you got algorithms that will try to find what you even like based on the things that you look up and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
huge. And with AI coming in, everything's just going to get more sophisticated and pretty wild.
Right. Do you think you
Yeah,
exited at the right time?
I do. I did. I mean, I was in it for 26 years. So I equate each
Yeah.
year to a mile. So I ran a marathon,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
happy with that marathon. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's just time for a new chapter. And I mean, there's still a lot of great opportunity in that industry. Companies that are very large and established, like the company that bought my company, they'll do great. Um,
Yeah.
they're just so entrenched in everything that they're
Right.
doing. Um, for more startup agencies, they definitely have their work cut out for them. But if they could specialize in a very particular niche, like say an agency that's AI driven, yeah, it could be a hot
Right.
opportunity that it could help them leapfrog and get in front of other bigger
Mhm.
companies so they can get that
Right.
specialized niche and grow from there. So
So I'm curious about, your book that you wrote, Business Kung Fu, correct? Kung Fu
yes, business
Business.
kung fu, business kung
Business
fu.
Kung Fu.
Yep, that's it right there.
Yeah. So this is where you meshed what you've learned in business and what you've learned dealing with stress or martial arts and health as a whole.
Yeah, so the concept is pretty much that. So I studied Chinese kung fu intensely from the age of 17 to 25, and I still study today. I got back into it, but the story is that when I started my company, I was 25, and I actually took a lot of the principles and lessons I learned from my studies and applied it to how I thought about the company, how I structured certain things, my mindset, discipline, perseverance. There's all these aspects. It's just also like an integrated system, like a complete system, because what the system I learned was a complete fighting system. So that's the way I looked at the company: is how can we be a have a complete integrated model rather than just relying on one thing that's like the trick of the day or the shiny object of the day, especially for marketing agencies. A lot of marketing agencies do that. So I applied that thinking to the company, and the book is really telling that story. At its core, it's a mindset book. At its really core, the nucleus, it's a mindset book, and it's geared towards entrepreneurs. That's the context because of my journey. Um, but some of the reviews that I've been getting, interestingly enough, on Amazon, people are saying not only is it a great roadmap for business, but also for life in general,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool. I'm
Yeah.
very happy to receive that feedback.
Right. Oftentimes I can see the parallel of the business lifestyle is just almost like a way of life. You'll see many successful entrepreneurs also focus on health and other aspects, and their values are, you know, interchangeable. So I could totally see that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I knew better, but it was just a lesson I learned. When I started the company, I was in just fantastic shape from doing martial arts and also strength training, going to the gym, lifting weights. So I was in great shape. And then I was so all in my business and so focused, I let my health go. I started working out less, I started practicing less, and I just got consumed by the business. And then 10 years later, I found myself on the opposite end of the spectrum where I was just completely out of shape. And then that started catching up to me. It started affecting me as far as my energy levels. Like by the time I hit 40, in my early 40s, I noticed like, wow, I'm like really tired in the afternoon. And then I'd get home at night and I'd eat dinner, with the family, and then I'd sit on the couch, start working a little bit, and all of a sudden I'd just crash. I would just like pass out, and I'd wake up a couple hours later, and I'm like, wow, that's weird. That would never happen to me before. Um, then turned out, and right around 2015, 16 or so, yeah, I think I was like 46. I was diagnosed with diabetes.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh man, this this sucks. This really
Yeah.
sucks. And I'd already had started working on my health a bit, right around 2012. So when I was 42, because of how I mentioned how I was feeling, gradually doing some stuff, and
Right.
then I came across medical qigong in 2014. So that was helping me. But when I got that diagnosis, I was like, all right, now I really need to get it in gear because it was ran in my family, and I know what it does. So it was a very big lesson for me, and I share this in my
Mhm.
book. The importance of self
Yeah.
care, and
Yeah.
thankfully, I have reversed it 100% naturally, and
Wow.
without any sort of pharmaceutical medications, and it's quite a battle, but it can be done. But yeah, it takes a lot of discipline, and you have to fight the battle on many fronts. It's like land, air, and sea. All guns a blazing. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm guessing it was a lot of different things you had to do lifestyle wise.
it's a lifestyle change. Like when I spoke to my doctor, when she told me the news, I was like, wow. And she's like, well, here's some options. And I said, well, I really don't want to get on pharmaceuticals. I'm just not a fan.
Right.
And yeah, I worked with a bunch of pharmaceutical companies actually for like 10 years. Yeah, as clients,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Um, and
To say the least.
to say right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she said, okay, well, yeah, you can do it naturally. It's a lifestyle change. And I said, okay, let's do that. Just like you said, it's a lifestyle change. So yeah, I just really adjusted my diet, supplementation that the doctor recommended. Got back into strength training because it's really good for diabetes when you're building up lean muscle mass. It helps regulate blood sugar. Um, um, More sleep also.
Mhm.
Um, Walking, more consistently,
Yeah.
getting a good amount of steps in. There's all these different things that you have to do on a daily basis, but that's okay.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I feel great. I feel like I did in my 20s, honestly,
Wow.
and
That's amazing.
that's through a combination of qigong, which I do every morning,
Mhm.
and strength training a couple times a week, and then martial arts. I do that anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week, and then steps and uh, just a much better diet and supplementation and sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I can see it. You're very vibrant.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I understand that exactly what you're saying, there's the other side of the spectrum of entrepreneurs who go all in so hard that they
Hmm.
the balance is lost along the way, and I've seen that firsthand
Yes.
too with my family has an entrepreneurial spirit, and I saw those
Mm,
lessons. I learned them vicariously through my parents, especially my dad. Same situation, got diabetes, um, and
mm,
health issues like that. So seeing that made me realize how important the balance was, to not let it tip over and then have to work, which I'm sure you can attest to, is harder to work the other way once you
yeah.
start seeing signs. Yeah.
It sure is. I would tell my wife in the early days as I was doing the lifestyle change, like those first couple months, I just kept telling her, diabetessucks.com. You know, someone probably
Yeah.
has that URL,
Yeah,
if there
probably.
isn't a web, I've never looked it up, but that's what
Yeah.
I would say, just because it was like, oh man, because like you said, it's hard to go the other direction. So if you can cut it off at the pass and not go there. That's why I shared that in my book, because it's something I want to share with people. Like,
Hmm.
don't do what I did. Learn from my mistakes.
Hmm.
And I have a saying in my book: be of service to self, so you can be of service to others for a lifetime.
Right.
Because where I found myself, where I was so focused and consumed on the company and everybody else and giving to everybody else and not really taking time for myself, I found myself in burnout. Right, I
Yeah.
just was tired and crashing, and I just didn't even have the energy to perform like I used to.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make sense. If and that's why I say be of service to self, so you can be of service to others for a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
Not just a long time, but a lifetime. Because again, like I said, I feel great today, and I have plenty of energy, and yeah, it's just different. So definitely something I highly encourage people to take time to do that self care.
Hmm. What do you personally recommend? Obviously sleep, nutrition, but what is something
Yeah.
that is unique or interesting that you enjoy that you recommend?
Right. Well, yeah, I have my way. There's many ways up the mountain, and I think everyone needs to find what they enjoy. That's the first thing. So for myself, I really enjoy my qigong practice. I do it every morning. So normally I wake up at like 5, and then I'll go through a series of various qigong exercises that for people that are not familiar with qigong, it looks like Tai Chi. A lot of people are familiar with Tai Chi and how it looks. So it looks similar to that, slow flowing movements, integrating the mind, body, and breath. And there's all kinds of different exercises. Some are very interesting because some incorporate sound, actually, and also visualization. So it has a purging, tonifying, and regulating effect. Purging, get rid of the bad, tonifying, strengthening, filling with good, and then regulating is balance. And like you said earlier, it is all about balance. And there's something else in my book I talk about with that we can get to. But so I'll do that, and then I'll normally meditate um, um, for about 45 minutes or so. So usually it's about an hour and a half. Yeah, and then a couple days a week, I'll do strength training, and then martial arts is usually at least once a week for a couple hours, and then getting steps in. So that's kind of like the different activities throughout the week. But again, some people, for them, maybe they would prefer yoga over qigong, which I like yoga a lot. It's
Yoga's
just
good
like,
too.
yeah, it's just like there's only so much time, and I mean, really,
You can,
you
yeah,
can spend
yeah,
all day taking care
yeah,
of
yeah,
yourself with all kinds of different things. You really could, but
yeah,
so you got to
yeah.
pick and choose,
That's
like what's going to
it's a
bring you joy.
balance. Yep,
Yeah, it's a
yep.
balance, right? Because you have obligations and responsibilities, but making time to take care of yourself. And for me, what I do is I just wake up early, so I get the time in before anyone else is up in the house, and anyone else is like emailing me or calling, because that's just my time, right? So I just make sure I wake up early. When I first found out I had diabetes, and I was really in the midst of running my company, we were on this great growth trajectory. We're on the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row. So we were probably like in year 4 on that. Um, I was like, wow. I asked the people at because my doctor is like this integrated wellness center. They have a gym with trainers and nutritionists and chiropractors. It's a super cool place.
That's awesome.
It's called it's called Stark. Actually, it's only out here in Southern California, but it's really cool. Um, but I asked them like, hey, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I can get here at 5. Do you guys open at 5? And they're like, not really, but all right, we'll do it for you.
Uh-huh.
So I'd wake up at like 4:20 because it wasn't very
Wow.
close to me either, and I just go in and that's what I had to do because usually my workday started at by like 7.
Hmm.
So get in there, work out for an hour, get showered up, over to the office by 7. Um, yeah, so you just
When
have
did your
to.
workday end?
Well, at that point, I was grinding still.
Probably seven,
Yeah.
8, 9.
Well, at that time, I would try to make it a point to leave work around 5, 5:30, somewhere
Okay.
between 5:30 and 6.
Yeah.
I'd go home, eat dinner, but then I usually would work another hour or two, um, and then get to bed, by 10 or so. Before it was a lot worse. Like, say in like 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, I would get in 7, 8 o'clock, get home 6, eat dinner. By 8 o'clock, I'd start my second shift. I make a whole pot of coffee. I already had drank
Oh, at
coffee,
8 p.m.
a few cups of yeah. I already
Yeah.
drank a few cups in the day, so I'd make
Yeah.
that pot of coffee. And by 9 o'clock, I was starting my second shift. And I'd drink that entire pot, and I'd stay up to like 2, sometimes 3, and then I'd wake up in the morning. I'd crash. I'd immediately fall asleep, and then I would
Right.
wake up at like 6:30 or so,
Make more
wired.
coffee. Oh,
And then,
really?
yeah, well, actually, I would wait to go into the office, and I'd get the coffee from the coffee shop down the
Yeah.
street from the office.
Right.
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. I
Yeah.
don't know what I was thinking. I was just consumed. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I should have known better. Actually, and looking back, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, why I knew better. Like, what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
you
It
know?
happens.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah, I've experienced that for sure. You also eventually it catches up to you. You get burnout.
It
Uh,
it
the
does. It does.
yeah, you get the caffeine tolerance, and just nothing at that point can keep you up at that magnitude.
Yeah. Yeah, I found myself, and one day I was like, God, I really have to cut back on coffee because it was exactly what you just said. So I started cutting it back and cutting it back. It took a little while, but I did cut it back. And then, yeah, around 2012, um, that's when I'd already been cutting it back, and I started doing certain things
Yeah,
to slowly work on my health. And I already kind of told you how that progressed. So, yeah.
yeah. Especially when you're on that productivity grind, that kind of sucks because you feel that cutback on caffeine, and you're not as productive
Yes.
as you
Right.
remember as you were. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a good minute to get back to normal.
It does. It does. There's like
Yeah,
total withdrawals, and then even
yeah,
like headaches. Which I never get headaches, or I never would,
yeah,
but I would find myself getting these caffeine headaches because of the lack of caffeine. Yeah, it was
yeah.
just so strange, very addictive.
Yeah, that's when you realize it's a
Yeah,
drug. Is when
yeah,
you
it really
actually
is.
take back. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Craig, I was a little curious. We talked about one of the values in your book being health focused, based on looking
hmm,
back at your journey. What's another value in your book? Because you said it's
sure.
mainly mindset related, especially for someone who's probably starting out.
Yes. So earlier you mentioned the phrase "it's all about balance," right? So there is in the first chapter actually. It's all about laying the foundation. That's just like how I learned martial arts. You had to build a foundation. Um, and in the first chapter, I have a model I call the 5 elements of entrepreneurship. Um, I'm starting to kind of play with that term because as I'm getting out there more with this, I'm kind of thinking of rephrasing it as the 5 elements of entrepreneurial success. Because it really, or it could just be 5 elements of success because it really applies not only to business, but in life in general. But it's all about balancing these elements. And this model is based on Chinese 5 element theory. The 5 element theory uh, permeates throughout Chinese culture and martial arts and medicine and spiritual systems and music, food. There's just this 5 element theory that's all about balance, and the elements in this classic Chinese 5 element theory is fire, earth, water, metal, and wood. And we all have this constitution that's made up of these different elements, and it's there's so much to it. It's super deep and expansive. So my just through my experience and my studies of Chinese Kung Fu and medical Qigong, I started to realize, oh, it's interesting. There's actually five elements to entrepreneurship and five elements to entrepreneurial success. And so the five elements I've identified are passion, and then passion, and this goes in a cycle, just like five element theory, the generative cycle. So it builds, right? So fire leads to discipline. I mean, passion. Sorry, fire is passion's like fire, right? Because it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fire within, and
The
it's heart,
drive,
right?
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so um, passion leads to discipline. Okay, and discipline leads to expertise, and then expertise leads to confidence, and confidence leads to faith. So it's a cycle, and as you develop the elements within, we all have these aspects of these elements, but as you really work on them and develop them, it helps build the capacity of the subsequent elements, then the potential, and then it develops it. So it works in a cycle. However, it could also go through a destructive cycle, which is the reverse, because it's mindset, right? It's mindset. If you start to lose your faith, oh, it could start affecting your confidence, and it could just be a downward spiral rather than an upward spiral.
Right. You said passion leads to discipline, discipline leads to expertise, expertise leads to
Yes.
confidence. And what was the last one? Or is that the last one?
Confidence leads to faith.
Faith. Okay.
Faith. Yes. Faith.
Faith in,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, faith in what?
Mhm.
In yourself or in your, yeah.
Yes and yes. So for those out there who are, say, maybe on the more atheist side of things or agnostic, well, at least believe in yourself. You have to at least believe in yourself. But I do advocate believing in a higher power,
Mm,
and whatever it is, whatever your faith is, you just lean into that. And it's very interesting. Faith, this is the element that gets you through the toughest moments. And in entrepreneurship, you get tested. You get tested to your limit, and you're going to have like some extremely dark moments where it just feels kind of hopeless. And it's faith is which gets you through those times. And it's interesting when you have that strong faith, it helps you persevere, and it just attracts moments of divine guidance, of providence, that wow, that just happened for me. Like, wow, that was amazing. Like, how did that just happen? I'll share an example. This is the early days. I'm probably about 4 years into the company. I'm working at my office, and um, I was sharing the office with my parents. They also had a very small fire sprinkler company, and they did okay in the 80s. But when the recession in the early 90s came, it like really hurt everything bad. Like the restaurant had to close down, and then the construction company, which was small to begin with, got like super small. So we shared an office to save money, but so it's like an industrial office space. So it was like super cheap, and it was one little office in the reception area, and then in the warehouse we kind of partitioned it off, and I handled a lot of production work back there, and where we're partitioned. So it gets super hot in the summer and super cold in the winter. So this was like
right.
winter time, and I'm like all bundled up, even had gloves on. It was just really cold in there, and it's past midnight, and it was this huge struggle. I'm not barely making any money, and I was just thinking to myself, what am I doing? Like, am I just crazy? Am I stupid? Like, what's my problem? Like, what am I
right.
doing here? Like, all of this crazy
The
self
self
talk,
doubt.
and just
Yeah.
the self doubt, and I like spinning wheels, not going anywhere, not making real traction, struggle. Why? While I was seeing a lot of my friends, enjoying life, because being in the late 20s by then, and people are like in their careers and doing well, and here I am like struggling. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, yeah, and I was just like seconds away from quitting, like literally, like just a few seconds away from quitting. And I just happened to check email for some reason. And I got this email from one of my vendors, a hosting provider. And it came from the founder of the company. And I was like, huh, this is interesting, because it was just like this letter. And he was essentially thanking all his customers. And he was giving them the news that he had sold the company. And he was really giving a lot of gratitude to the customers and relaying and expressing what a struggle it was at times for him, and how he was super close to quitting at times. But he persevered, and he grew the business, and now he sold it, and now he's like looking to just kind of find time to have fun and enjoy himself. And I read that, and I was like, wow, okay.
What timing?
You're exactly
Yeah.
right. I mean, I got that email at the exact moment I needed to get it. That's what I mean by like these moments of divine guidance come in. They happen. These synchronicities, they do happen. But you have to have faith, and one can't get that or understand it through book knowledge. You have to experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really have to experience it, and then for everyone, it's different. But yeah, that's why I'm such a strong advocate for believing in yourself. For sure, you have to have that self belief, but then also backed up by whatever your faith is. And if someone's onto that, well, hey, have an open mind. Maybe try it out.
Right. I'm curious about the roadmap, right? So you say when you have some expertise, which I assume you're starting to build traction, that's when the confidence comes in, and from confidence you have faith. I'm curious, in that middle period where, let's say, you're in the verge of quitting, or you aren't quite there, you don't have that full expertise yet, right? You're still in the trenches. Is that when the confidence and then the faith is tested, would you say?
Yeah. So let's say you're in the midst of building your expertise, and um, so one thing also, there's all these different relationships between the elements that can be
Oh, okay.
positive and negative as well. So, for example, expertise, leads to confidence, right? As I mentioned, because when you're really good at something, you just naturally feel confident about it. Like
Right.
you can talk about it, you know your shit. Sorry, you know your stuff, and you can
Yeah.
talk about it, and you can sell it. You're excited about it, and you just know you can get it done, right? Um, well, each element has that direct influence on the subsequent, but it also has a positive influence on the following element. It's like there's the parental relationship, but then there's the grandparent relationship. So in a sense, it kind of helps create the potential, the capacity for that um, grandchild element to be filled. Maybe it's so as you get that expertise build up, and it's going to have that direct impact, influence, parental relationship on the next element, which in this case, confidence. It's also going to, maybe this little circle of faith was here, but now the potential has been increased because of the continuous expertise that you're building. And once you end up getting that confidence, then the confidence is now starting to fill up that faith bucket in a sense. Because the confidence is really, or faith is really like confidence on steroids, you know, because the confidence is in yourself, but then having true belief in yourself with certainty that you can succeed and overcome, it's different than being confident in your abilities. Like, yeah, I'm good at this. I'm great at this. Yeah, right. But when it comes to being tested and overcoming, that's when faith comes in.
Right. It's like true conviction, and no matter
Yeah,
what happens, you'll stick with it. Yeah.
absolutely. Now,
Um,
with one thing with the balance, it was so important though too, is because then certain I mentioned how the elements can have a negative relationship to each other. So, for example, confidence. Since we're talking about confidence, you can have it could be in balance, or you can have excess or deficient conditions. So, let's say an excess of confidence. What does that look like? It's arrogance, right? It's when someone has an inflated ego and they just think that they're um, the best thing in the world, right? And it could come off on how they treat people, and um, not being humble by any means. And then what it could also do is it could have that, I call it insulting, or that's kind of like the traditional Chinese term, insulting. There's various terms, but that's the one I choose. Insulting. It's a negative relationship to discipline. I'm so good. I don't need to keep practicing.
Right.
I'm just that good. Why
Yeah.
do I need to go work on that? Yeah, I don't need to do that. You know? Yeah, you see that. I mean, you see it at times in different sporting events when an athlete is like overly confident and they're just
Yeah.
not working on foundational skills or practicing the things that they should. And then I have another saying in my book: if you're not humble, eventually you will get humbled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happens. Just that's just what it is. So yeah, so you can have excess or deficient conditions in each of these elements. So the thing is that all these elements have to be in balance. The ideal way is that you got to develop them and then maintain the balance for the best path to success.
Right.
Yeah.
I love I love that the in order to start, you need that fire, you need that passion in something to get you
Yes.
going.
Yes.
And the same way you
Yes.
said the reverse can happen is if you start losing faith, you go right backwards on that path. I think that's
That's right.
super interesting. But
Yes.
I am curious about this idea of passion because I'm sure you've heard of it. So many people talk about this idea of passion or find your passion or do what you're passionate about. But that's not necessarily always the easiest to figure out. Or,
Mhm.
I'm just curious what your thoughts are because sometimes perhaps maybe the passion happens after you start working. Some I don't know if that's ever been the case.
I mean, it can. Everyone's different, right? And perhaps whatever business someone is in or job, maybe it's not their exact passion, but then perhaps there's something that gets introduced into the way they can approach their work that they can become passionate about that brings in a level of passion. Uh, with passion, when it's like taking an inventory of yourself or an assessment, right? What brings me joy? What activities in life bring me joy? And or what puts me in a flow state? Or I like to call it rhythm state. The name of my company was Rhythm, right? It started off as rhythmnet.com, then Rhythmnet Design Group, Rhythm Interactive, and then finally just Rhythm. Um, Rhythm is everywhere and in everything. There's like a whole other deep meaning there. But a rhythm state, a flow state where you lose time in whatever activity that you're doing. You're just completely focused in the moment with a loss of a sense for time. That's when you're passionate about something.
It's a good way to
Another
put it.
way to feel that or express that passion. And then joy. I think joy is a big one too. If you're just in a state of joy, that's a passion. So, taking that inventory, asking yourself those questions. And then for me, when I started uh, my company, I combined two passions. I had a passion for music. I was a musician. I played guitar and piano, and I was passionate about that. And then I had this passion for technology. I explained how I was, learning and you know soaking it up, and I just loved it. I was like, wow, this stuff is amazing. This is so cool. Like how we can communicate and all the stuff you can do. It's incredible. And just kind of thinking about what could the possibilities, I took two different passions and combined them to create something new. And that's actually what I'm doing today. I'm actually doing a repeat because I have all this years of experience in business and so forth. Uh, but I also have just a passion for um, helping others, developing and creating things. So really, I define my purpose now, moving forward in this next chapter, is that I like to create things that inspire and empower others to help them fulfill their potential. So that's where I derive a lot of joy, is when I'm creating or I'm helping someone in some way, right? And that's why I wrote the book. And actually, the book, interesting enough, books were my first passion in life. I loved to read when I was a kid. I always had a book in front of my face. I loved reading. Yeah. So it's just interesting to integrate that passion. So people, maybe they are super focused to have one passion, but there could be many passions, and then how can you incorporate these various passions to create something new? Is something
Right.
that's cool, because then you can be like unique and different.
Right. So I go on these yearly little mastermind trips with some friends. We brainstorm
Oh,
stuff, and
cool,
I'm sure
cool.
you've done things like that in the past and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one year we were
Mhm.
talking about this idea of people having profound success often showed, because they say success leaves clues and ways, and we were
Mm.
analyzing these certain people in different categories, and we noticed that some of these people that were having profound, like, success had couple interdisciplinary fields that they would almost connect two to three, to be exact, right? And if you look at it in a lot of these successful stories and companies, let's just take Apple for example. They are a software company, but if you see, they're also very artistic with their
Yes.
ads, with their music, with
Hmm.
the even just the way their products look. It's very, and that's probably due to Steve Jobs' vision. He was a very
Yes,
artistic person, and
that's
you can
right.
see that in so many different ways. And with yours is combining, health and business.
Yes.
I think there's a entrepreneur, Myron Gold, I think is his name. He does like religion and business. So there's all these,
Oh,
and he's very
interesting.
successful because of that, because he connected two disciplines. So
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, is connecting your passions to give you a unique personality, instead of
Hmm.
just business, right? And things like
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's having your own signature on, like an artist does a painting and they have their own signature, right? Yeah, combining your
Yeah.
passion gives you your own unique signature in a sense. And that's where also with Qigong, I'm so passionate about that, and I'm wanting to bring it into the business consulting. And I'm still defining that, but that's another big aspect of me combining things to have this more unique signature to what I do.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm also curious to know if you think passion is specific or if it could be broad, right? So, for example,
Mm.
someone might be very passionate about the piano specifically and just play the piano, but someone else might be passionate about music in general and loves to just play instruments. Same way in business, someone might be very passionate about the marketing side of business, or a marketing agency, marketing in general, versus someone else just loves the game of seeing something grow and then selling it,
Mm.
or no matter what that business is. I'm curious if you think
Right.
passion can be broad like that.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Everyone is unique and different from each other. And what you just described in a way is where passions end up influencing people as to whether they become like a specialist or a generalist, right? So someone who's playing the piano and they're focused on the piano and they become this, virtuoso. Uh, maybe they play in an orchestra, right? So, and they're just, that passion about the piano. But then, like, say there's someone who's just has that same amount of passion, but it's for music in general, right? And but in that orchestral setting, it could be the conductor, or maybe it's someone that is like a music supervisor for films, or whatever the case may be. There's all these different professions. A music producer, for example, right, that works with all kinds of different artists and helps create their songs and albums, but they're the ones that is helping to orchestrate everything, right, produce it. So, and that goes across all kinds of different industries where you can have a specialist or a generalist. You have the people that are doing the in like the agency world, the people that are or say let's say the new agency model where you have programmers doing programming, developers, designers, different types of designers doing let's say interaction design. Maybe they're doing traditional print design, all those different flavors. Strategists, someone who's focused on strategy. We have three pillars at our company: strategy, design, and technology. So we had specialists that would lead each of those pillars. They were very good at what they did. For myself, I did everything, but I became the generalist because I couldn't do it all. Everything kept getting more complicated, limited time. Uh, and I did have a passion for organization and structure and leadership and so forth. Um, and I became a generalist. And so there's different ways to go about it, and there's no I don't believe there's like the best way. It's really up to the individual. It really is. Someone could be super successful being a specialist, and then the next person would be horrible at that, but then they have great success being a generalist.
Right, right. Have you heard of or read the book The One Thing?
I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
Hmm.
Yeah, what's
S the Yeah, so the essence is just in a way is to boil down to one field or one niche, one idea, instead of just spreading yourself thin amongst things.
mm, hmm
So, for example, if I'm doing this podcast and then I start a whole nother industry side or maybe two different things on the side, and next thing you know, my mind can't focus on one because I'm scattered amongst different fields.
hmm
Say let's say someone's into music but also cooking and also dancing. Those are,
hmm
three different fields. You can't get really good at one because you're switching so many times between one another. Is do you Have you seen that ideology play out amongst your journey in business? Is if you stay in one field, at least at the beginning, that
there's
you see the
something to be
growth?
said about that. Like for example, I think at the beginning of our conversation, we were just talking about the marketing industry, the agency model, right? And it was easier in the 20th century to be more general. I think that's very challenging these days, unless you're already like established and you have a deep talent pool and all kinds of resources, et cetera, et cetera. For agencies that are starting up, I think it's a better approach to really focus in on a particular area, a particular niche. That could be technology driven, like say AI. It could be industry driven, like healthcare. All right. Um, so yeah, having that focus on that one thing, that specialty, to really get a foothold and get you established, and you can really make a name for yourself with that particular thing and grow. It could be, you know, AI in for healthcare, right? Like an agency that specializes in an AI, but in the context of healthcare, right? So that'd be like the one big thing, right? That someone could focus on. And I think today it's quicker for you to gain success with that approach. It's not the only approach, though. If someone wants to go the other route, they could. It's just going to be a tougher battle, I believe, because everything continues to get more specialized as we move forward, as more and more gets created out of everything that we have at our disposal these days.
Right, which is why I think what we were talking about earlier with combining disciplines kind of puts you
hmm
in that unique position to stand out a little bit.
Yes, right. And it's interesting because the way you describe that book, you say, don't do this, 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 focus on one thing. But like in my example, I combined two passions where I did this and this and I combined it, but then that became one thing. So it's all a matter of
Right,
perspective
right.
and how you want to interpret things. And
Yeah.
and again, I this is what I found is again, I always like to say this: everyone is different. Everyone is a unique expression, a unique divine expression of the Creator, and there isn't one approach that works for everybody because we're all so different, right? When we would engage with our clients, we always had a custom approach because all our clients were unique and different with their own situational context, their needs, their challenges, their markets, etc. So um, there's the approach where you could take a template and try and make that work for everybody, and it can work pretty good, maybe for a lot of people, but um, it's not going to work for everybody. One, and then two, when you really look at problem solving and creating solutions, when you really focus in and make something that's custom tailored for them, then that's when you're going to get the best results. That was the experience I had with our company, and I feel that is the same with individuals, with whether it's health, whether it's business. What works for you? What ignites your passion? What's going to that's going to spark the fire in you to go out and be disciplined and build that expertise, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Um, and it's different for everybody. And that's with different aspects of life, with health, career, business, family, et cetera.
Yeah. I love that approach because I think oftentimes many people forget how unique each human being really is because of how many
Mm-hmm.
variables go into shaping the person at that exact moment when you're meeting them.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many factors that just go into who someone is at the moment you see them. Um, it's just a
That's
very
right.
unique, which requires a unique approach for each person almost.
That's right, because why should, and this is a challenge that many of us come across, is people getting judged, preconceived notions of how they are because of whatever that situational context is. So
Right. The
as opposed
snapshot.
to right, as opposed to meeting someone and having that blank slate and then experiencing that person for who they are based on their entire life experience, right?
Right. Which is why you also don't see people succeed when they try to emulate somebody else because it's that
Yes.
authenticity portion isn't there.
Right, right. 'Cause you got to be yourself. Yeah, no, that's huge. That's very very true. I think you know I would say all of us probably have experienced that at some point as we're growing up. Like, oh yeah, that didn't work for me. Um, yeah, that's big. Yeah, and more so than ever because people are just seeking out authenticity and they're able to detect when things are inauthentic much easier than before. It seems. So yeah, it's super important to just be you and do you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you see more successful people often just own up to that, the mistakes, the accountabilities, their life, everything.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's where I think also you find a symptom of that arrogance is sometimes when people, when confidence is excess and you get into the
Mm,
arrogant territory where they might be trying to emulate someone else because they feel they're like
interesting.
at that level, right?
Yeah.
That could be another manifestation of that because that, something like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm just like so and so, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not.
I forgot who it was. A very successful person, and he kept saying on this interview, I he said he would say, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm nobody because
Mm,
otherwise that overinflated arrogance starts to creep in. Like, I've done all this. Look at me. This is who I am. But that's not
yeah.
his authentic self. His authentic self is what got him there to that level of success, money,
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
recognition. But if you let that overinflate, then you're no longer that authentic self. And like we talked about earlier, you get
Hmm.
humbled down or something happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My way of expressing that sentiment was like talking to people. Oh, or I'd get introduced, like, and then, oh wow, I'm just another dude. You know,
Right.
I'm just another dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not special. Yeah, yeah, I'm just another dude. So,
I
yeah,
love that.
yes.
So, Craig, I want to ask you one more question that I always ask my guests at the end of the show, which is, what is
Okay.
one life lesson? Since this show is called Learn or Be Learned, what is
Mm.
one thing that you learned from others or you want others to learn from you as like a take home message?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, what I've learned from others is what's really most important in life is our relationships at the end of the day. All right. All the material things and all that, yeah, they're cool. They're nice. Um, but at the end of the day, what kind of quality time are we spending with the people that we value in our life? You know, how healthy are our relationships? You know, how much time do we dedicate towards them? At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I feel that's one big lesson I've learned. Now, what I would like people to learn from me, I think that the aspect of balance, you know, like we had the discussion about balance. Life is really about balance, and that ties into with the relationship aspect because your life has to be in balance in order for you to have quality relationships.
Yeah. I, me and my friends always talked about this idea of you want you want the quality of time, which is, often brought by, if you want quality of time, you need money to have time, you need people to spend that time with, quality time with, and you need health to have that quality of time, right? So, like the relationships, health, and finances are those three pillars that give you that quality of life. I believe those three pillars can often give you that sense of, happiness and freedom to focus
Yes.
on what's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The freedom to be, right. And that's like the
Mm,
ultimate, you know, that some of the big things of why I went into business too is like that freedom of time, you know, to be free.
hmm.
Yeah. I value
Yeah.
freedom quite a bit. But it's interesting as you chase these things, you know, like you just mentioned, you can end up in the trap of enslavement too.
Yeah. Right.
Right? If you're not
Right.
careful. So that's why it's all about balance because you gotta be balanced along the way throughout the journey. Otherwise, you get enslaved and bad things happen. You know, like for me, it
Yeah.
was health. For another, it could be relationships.
Yeah. If you over focus on one pillar, the other two aren't growing at that
Hmm.
rate, right? Which your
Right?
foundation starts to crumble a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Balance. The
Absolutely.
yin and the yang. You're right.
Craig, thank you so much for being on the show. I had a great time chatting with you.
Thanks, Shiva. I really had a great time too. Thank you so much.